So now I'd like to turn to some of the questions that we've been getting from the audience. And I'm not surprised that there are a lot of questions about this idea of self-compassion. And so I would like to start, because many of the questions basically ask, why is self-compassion useful? And is self-compassion just like self-cherishing, which seems like something that could be harmful? And so I'd like to start this discussion with a little bit of a story about the history of self-compassion. So there was a young woman who was a student, a graduate student, studying science at UC Berkeley, named Kristen Neff. And she was feeling lots of stress, lots of anxiety. She was very busy. She was feeling very badly when she was not perfect. If her performance on an exam was not the best in the class, she was very angry with herself. And she believed that she would be happy if everything was perfect. She thought, if everything is perfect, I will be happy. And she was never happy, because you can't have everything perfect. And she is the one who thought, maybe it's not a good idea to be angry with myself when things are not perfect. And she thought, maybe the better thing is to be kind to myself and to understand that the real source of my happiness is not trying to be perfect, but the real source of my happiness is to understand the nature of suffering and to understand the causes of my happiness. And so when she describes self-compassion, she says it has 3 parts. One part is awareness of my thoughts. Another part is common humanity, an understanding that I suffer and I like happiness just like you suffer and you want happiness, just like every sentient being suffers and wants happiness. And the third part, I have to look, is understanding the inevitability of suffering and strengthening your ability to be kind. So I can be kind. I understand that I suffer and other people suffer, and I am aware of the things that make me suffer. So in some ways, self-compassion maybe is a bad name, because it makes it sound like cherishing of the self, but really it's a moment of inviting a different approach to happiness and understanding and embracing the understanding of suffering and the nature of suffering for all of humanity. So that's the story I have about self-compassion. But I'd also love to know what other people think about, and particularly the monastics, what you think about that way, or that story of self-compassion.
파게줄로 여대 신연이나 소소게 류이나 나이나 예이나 간다 참아데 리탕 여바데 소소소 공어주 토고에도 기침을해서 된대고요. 제가 소소이네 때는 나는 뭐 중사래 모선이네 보게 로자만 장하고 준로 따세 잡아서 따세 땅데 소소소 자다 zon데네 방도고 쉬어 셈바죠 다치가 힘도 처음부터 상상 용거 얘나야 뭐서 대 용사용사들 라지스 슈체란 용되고 먼저 로전 지에 있는데 저도 소소 강시 지시진이 밖에 야고 자제 되면서 참말에 야와지 용거서 산로게 되어이나 현재도 저다도 zon데 상반은 도쇼 용거도 대 라지스 슈체란 용되고 그랬어. ene tetno tendage sanlo de leyon soso ke le den soso ke shin de ene yabo yin ba ji soso de ba ge shinju ji de mo ba cha go ke chimure de de dos ene raji de den de menge senjin ji le kon bore sa ngara ine raji de shuchi mo yos ine dande rang le twa ji ge de ngo so ngini de ni ji tan ji ge mares ine churso ni ji tan ji ge de ine ko de mi ji bo yin ba la ko ba ge de ka ga rest.
In our system, or in our tradition also, we talk about the importance of looking at the values of the self and the thoughts of our own. So when, for example, for me personally, when we have a debate, philosophical debate, and I fail to respond, make a proper response to the challenges, I feel bad. The reason why I feel bad, if we think about this, I think about it, then it's because of my self-grasping or the self-cherished attitude that I have. And the same as the one that is in the story, so all the problems are because of too much of self-cherish and self-grasping. And I think that there's no individual, no person who don't have a certain level of this self-grasping or the self-cherish thinking. So now it seems that even though you are using this self-compassion, so it may mean something else. You are talking about something else, but you are using a term that is not there in our vocabulary.
I agree.
Yes, thank you. That was a really good answer. I think what we're homing in on is the idea that the example of the student at Berkeley is that she was amplifying the meaning of one solitary failure, and it was beginning to be a defining characteristic of her entire life, her entire being. So definitely there was grasping for the meaning of this event as it relates to the self. And the self-compassion practices that we've derived in the West with the help of Jinpa perhaps allow us to see that this one moment is simply a moment, and it is not the defining moment of our life. And if we can tell ourselves, invite ourselves to be kind, and not to overstate the meaning of one event, then that is a way of letting go of the pain, the fangs this event has for us.
Tak karsana tangzu ta nyingji ta ga rangla nyingji gumse ti thola ta sikar yula kora ta te nga china chita ngazu nyingji se di sana karsana ta nyingji la chita ramba mamu chi yora ta nyingji chembu se ro ta nyingji cheme se ro ni ta na shi chi tami te mayembi nyingji ta choso de mamu yora ta mamu ramba mamu chi yori ta inaya nyingji korong ngo de ngazu kan ji sa ko sana chita dungi ki narda vi simsin chi thongaya na te dungi ta tena nyambi tin sewa chi la nyingji sa ko yora oda tini sonza rangla nyingji gumse de chita ta shira meya ro chi re na ya sosu rangi ji kangi shoji thede kabla yang rangi la nyingji gomen ro ta tozo yang pachir mandre yuki mar san ro ji teng dunga ta si chi na ra ni chita ya ji zong nang ji chi wa na nyingji ta se de ka phala lo wa na nyingji ta pa rangi lo wa na ngi jong se ro tin ro chi cha ro se ro tin ji song go ra ina yang ta koronzo ji rangi la nyingji gomni ta na se ni kangi thede ni mambu ji la phen ro go yori teni sonza ni ji nga zo number san ji ji ina nyingji se de dungi ki nar dewa ji la ni dungi ta tendu ku sewa tin ji la ja ko sonza rangi la ni dungi ta tin ji kangi chimbu shu ji thede kabla ya rangi dungi ta tena nya bi ni ji gomba ta zo ya phakir ndu dewa ro ji thong du nga na sam ji ina.
In Buddhism, when we talk about different types of compassions, and as I have mentioned before, like the great compassion and the limited compassion, and there can be other different types of compassions. And according to the sutra or the doctrines of the Buddhist philosophical traditions, in order to have compassion, you always need somebody who is suffering. So that means compassion always directed from yourself towards the other. But if you consider yourself as an object who is out there in the outside world, then you could say that this is compassion. The same kind of motivation from our point of view, if it is direct towards the others, then we call it compassion. But same kind of motivation or same kind of mental state, if it is directed towards yourself, we call it renunciation, not compassion. But so you could say self-compassion, something like that.
Then you don't question by in round and Niji Goya Mena and been around the Ogor, around Chibu Gore, and the Kandis Chibures. Nothing goes to Rodi. Is it by in a Rani, Tabujo, around Chibu Gore? The Gotan San Batan by ina. The round Chibuda, round the Buyabu to Nala, round Jinsin Shuchimushu, round Ketchi Shudija, me, Yendi Yoto, round Rintan Chishu, the Pashu, the Rintan Joji. In the round the Ketchi Shabayina. The wrong Kasuda, Tabujo dance and the wrong the Yantabachi Marisandus. Wrong Dijeda, and wrong Yabu, you had thought the Pashu Jelatin in Ures. Jela Pakadu in Tanjaba, the Jela Pakadu Sanchi Chebaina. Any Kushula Rangi, the round Dijus of Junza, and Rangi around the Dijun, the Rana in Tabujo Yashuji in Ures Andusti. The Naji Rangi. Yabu Mayu the round double Jamato, Dushudir, Nalo saying, Taginando Ramada Mochago, the Tika Matune, in the wrong Sinju Trumne, in the wrong kind Molokinji, in social curiosity. Yes, Shamashaw, the Sumana, Tushu Mobo Goma, the sense when to shoot the cage should rest. She's the same double Joto, the same Rani Nato to Majune, in the Yabukatu Baina, in the round double Joya, the round Chibu Yage, Tonaya should not the Nigeria.
I think in one of the presentations, you said that if you don't have compassion towards yourself, you won't have the ability to be compassionate towards others. And when we talk about this way, in our tradition, we say that if you are compassionate towards others, you will be automatically happy. So in the process, the problem is that if you are paying too much attention, too much importance towards yourself at the first step, then you will not going to be happy as a result. But if you work for the happiness or think about the happiness of the others as a first step, then automatically as a result, your happiness also comes from there. And just as I said before, in the text, one of the texts of the great Buddhist scholar Shantideva, he says that all the happiness, it only comes from controlling your mind. That means controlling your thoughts.
So maybe there are 3 steps instead of 2. And if we think of self-compassion like you think of renunciation, that is first. And then, once you have that, you can dedicate time to meditation or inner awareness or controlling your thoughts, whatever practices you might need to do in order to extend compassion and then to be happy. So maybe 3 steps instead of 2.
Morang suye de gilan sense tanda dibjin taji ta company jiwa ta de sum chana gila kurang tanda ningji de su ka lobby be na ngenjung chek res je da dila sambal tangbung la ani ngenjung ske ngenjung de kebe ge gyumzen tene ani ningje da dinde ta gomya ti che ningji gomya chela me be ningji de gombe imbe na dila tene ani so digi tu gres ya ta rimba sum ktone shena disarves tanji rimba ni mi shimewa tangbung le ngenjung se komba de mewa dinde ro chasa de veles
ara dinde discourse ni paru titis ngasha ninji rani la mibi ganlam france sonde ninji sini mara jagar ka jag mare se ji to dinde discourse ane dek to lang ara sanza shubina shir ninji se ya ding anz chaba gar ko ni shegar labina miba number 님 건 책으로 와 ane miba de kandichile mindu number de kandichile chandu ti tesenero wa miba de dunga alchile mi number de dunga de da 전대 주제비 number 지 렌드나 다 nga랑 선서 지는 인지 도 지자 초면도 선서 딩고 단 남비 유언은 틈바치 차고 연하면 미치데 닌지 쇼 대다 쇼 통바라지 야토 멘도 선산다지 딩
So normally when we talk about something is compassion or not, we have to look into two characters according to Buddhist traditions. One is the object. Object means the object of your to whom you are compassionate about. So it has to be somebody who is suffering, somebody who has in problem. And then the second category or the second part is the nature of it. The nature means when you have this object who is object who is suffering, then the nature would be like you have this wish or the feeling that he may free from that kind of suffering. So if you have these two characteristics, then we call it a compassion. But the way you are describing, it can be kind of compassion also.
인주 세근데 뭐마 코란 슈바 있나 ene rani koye dungele tarne ene tabe komba tawe de jig loje la nginju sigres nginju ngoma de res rang koye dunge thamjela thagores te thamjela thai tapasen de thamde jila nginju sigres nginju se ngoma de dindi injam ta rani karse boda nasa dawoda rang ji sente dawoda dindi kange jila thatap de la ene nginju se la na nginju gu tunda tata de riga yamares nek samsu chena dagi shubana ji inter da chinzi cheba yana rang sen suwa tindi jilana ne kurang da tanda kos pobi juja del tatan rab jires rang da chi cheba yana rang sen suwa tindi jilawi yana ko tatan rab re ngin ju silana hajang ta chimbu jires te ti tande kos pobi ene kanghe ti seya ge ti tunda la ene til ngin ju silaba yana nga tana ti tunda tatan rigu yamares.
And when we talk about renunciation, strictly speaking, renunciation means to have a thought or a wish of getting rid of all the sufferings related with the cyclic existence. So to get enlightenment. So just to have a physical comforts, just to have to wish to have temporary relief from physical and mental sufferings. That's not renunciation, and so yeah. And if what we are thinking in this kind of a context is to just get rid of the temporary sufferings of others and yourself for a temporary period of time, then according to us, it's not renunciation.
I think the hope is longer term than just simply relieving temporary suffering. I think self-compassion has an aspiration for much wider understanding of the sources of suffering and the true sources of happiness. So I think there's more agreement than we understood before now. So thank you. Now I'd like to shift a little bit to a different question that many people asked about, which was this idea that there are specific treatments for specific problems. And when I hear the geshes speak, I hear the language of there's a precise antidote for each afflictive emotion. And so what I would like to say is maybe I will propose 3 kinds of afflictive emotion and 3 solutions, and then I want you to tell me what's right or wrong about my proposal. So I have jealousy, anger, hostility as one category of afflictive emotion, and I suggest that the antidote to that is practices which increase trust and common humanity. So your sense of trust with others and your sense of interdependence. The second category is sadness, deep sadness. And I suggest that an antidote for that are practices which increase gratitude and interdependence. So sense that other people are fundamentally part of our goodness in life. And then finally, the anxiety, worry, and fear, that category of afflictive emotions. Maybe the practices or the antidote is really mostly impermanence. this understanding analytically that everything that is troubling us is in fact temporary, and we can move beyond it. So that's my suggestion. I'd like to invite Marcel if he has any thoughts about those, and then also ask for your input around that.
Well, as Marcel thinks about that, I just want to make one small comment. You said in terms of the fear, anxiety, dread kinds of things that practice on impermanence, but also we have to practice impermanence for the things that are good in our lives and not cling to them as well. So it's a broader kind of practice in impermanence.
Any simzur ngemba rig dinzulas any nyembu gomchik digres ya dinde yungmares cheza ko mi manda yores su kam the mewa manda yores tigana shi any dela pawe ki any chikita chotab ki nyembu gumru nyemne zo manda gures tigana shi nganju ki shung nanglo la pecha shen tan doja da shedan timu dan teve ki simzur ngembe rig dinzula and dida dinde re la su ki nyembu re ten shi yores cheza da dinde ke chele ro cheza da dinde sung cheza dinde sambal pecha shen nge ki any dinde ke any simzur ngembe rig sum shagins chik de khares la bena any thakdo cheza any thakdo ki nyembu di any chikta ndo mi sangma any chigyur yimbe ke any rangshin lo de nyembu shagins tigana shi chik de any dunge se di nyembu nge ke any ta tender signore tenjung se di shagins ani shimba di ta ngangra se dir konzo ki anxiety se sto dila di nyembo di ani mitaba shagins cheza di shana di du mindu di zo le kiranzo samdu kari sungshos thagdo la ta ngazo mi sangma ji gyure samye lo dis wor thagdo nyembo mi sangma ji gyure se lo dis ro mi sangma ji gyure imbe lo dunge ge nyembo la tenjung tendel ani ngangra gi nyembola ani morak dilait mitaba
tachna de ta simsul ngemba te krala ta ri nyembuta chita ta namba sanji zona na da mamuju soyora pisana da ta nyumo ja tajaton she gore ta samba simsure dori nyumo ja tajaton nyembula chi phon ja tajaton song la yora tin de soyore ta na je ya ani te mai bisata ta simsul ngemba sena ta chi nyumo ro je ta naba sanji chi chi na nyumo la ko yora ta simsul ngemba te nyembula sita ngi chi nyembula ro gini nyembula ro sita mambu chi yora ta ina ta tu naba sanji jong chi wa na ta tu sangma ga ta sabi nyembu sawani me ta dagi sita khozu chi wa na ti simsul ngemba te ta sawani me zo yo mar se ando tin ro chi la ko ta ti ngazu namba sanji yong chi wa na sepsul nge bat ke sawani ta me zo yori da te ta ting zo munten san ro ji san ro do ta ina ya chata ya te di yo te kar se na ta namba sanji yong se ti kala chata ya chim bu chi ra ku chi gi ram bu chi la chi tisum zo ya chim bu chi ma chi na ta ga zo ni chi sepsul te ke samba me zo yore se na yori san ro ji semla khore da khabu chakri ra kar se na nga zo ya chi sa keng chi te la lomye chi ma yong keng te ni ga me cha te ni ro ji la ka chan ro ti ai na ta khorong pe khonru sa u shu do da te kar re te samnu ro ji ta ne me ya ro chu zo da la wa na te me zo yo mar te ngi shikari la ro ja ran shi ri da te me zo yo mar gira yo mar se ro te ni len ja chi yor ra ina ya ta te nawa sanji wi jong la ti sun lo nye te ja che bu chi yong di sa na ni so su gu ji sem sun ngem ba te chi sama me ya zu te me ya ina ya le ta nawa sanji wi jong ni so wa na ji chi wa ina tazo muktsani meya zo ata yosari sama roji sosu la ishin roji teni roji pakir leyan roji yore ra o tesi ta tesa shi chigo ya chik tani ta morangati trawaga lin roji ya na morangati chato go nyembu tela ta sama chibari seyan roji teni roji gomna kandidu roji la kudowa ta te chatan gipi chik tela chik nyembu tes royan roji ta yongse pa chik ta chatan chi ya na kaburi samudora nyembu ta ngi chi nyembu ro chi la in ba na ta sama chi ba la ro ten ji ga ni chi cha to me azo ya te khabu chakri ra ta nga du chi ya na cha ta ji se ran se ya ji la ko ta ji se ran de cha to ko nyembu la ro ri la ko ta ji se ran la ya de kan ri la ya na ta mi chi ya bu ro ji chong ya na ta ko la ten ji ya bu ji chong sa te ya bu ri sama ta samar ji ora te ji se ran la ya chi ta gya ro ji ya na mi la ta chi yunde ka ri ji chong ya na te ya bu du sama ji te la ga go me ro chi ora te ji se ran o te chi chato ko nyembu lan ro ro chi tin chi sung yo re 다시 당 저도 자니 지금 메아조의 그 니진이 문제라 도메토비 셰럽세야 송고요 때미아이나 가부차요라 가부차가리 다이나야 지금 다시 총으로 따야다 데리러라 지세랑세야도 도도티스 펜토고요리 삼고도 다양 심지다시 지바리 사마라도 조야 다시 지나 펜토고요 길이다 텐덴지다 하고 뭐야 니진이 문도 자니 메아조의 니진이 문텐들다 용아요 마르카보레 오타 텐디치 타세 심수르 마부지 어디잖아 지금 레레레가 님부터 자야 돼 시다 내리자 골라야다 시다 가부로 주도라 이나야 nganchakra nganchak nyembu tela da chita terita chita je dagji nyamji se ando tindi gomba na ta ngato tindi nyembu la shu phengre samudro karsena ngadu dagji nyamji la te terawa rang dewa tang je ki dungui jewa shembala dungui chong dewa te ani ngala chona ngi dewa te ke samani simchin la mena samba tindi gata lotup simbuji tindi chila ani dagji nyamji la ko yorwa o tindi ge 그 로트브 심부지 소소기라 키와이나 다 쟁그 둥이뜨게 참마 소소라 던들린데 그 루텐디 지금 용거라 신 둥이기 나데와지 통데와이나 티 둥이뜨게 나라 존나 삼바로 텐디 포바 심부도 냐도 심부지 세디잖아 나톡세 안로데 파치르다 용거마로라 근데 손자 더지 냠지세 안로 쳤다 상첩고 섬세 안로 도조 곰바이나 저 나톡 마요와도 졸라다 쇼펜토요리 삼고도라.
So when we talk about afflictive emotions and antidotes of these afflictive emotions, we talk about 84,000 afflictive emotions and 84,000 antidotes to these afflictive emotions. And we talk about antidotes to these afflictive emotions. We talk about direct antidotes and indirect antidotes. So each of these 84,000 afflictive emotions has its direct and indirect antidotes, and one antidote and one or more of these afflictive emotions can have common antidotes or the common indirect antidotes, or maybe multiple antidotes. For example, we talk about this jealousy. You said jealousy, and for us, and you said that the common understanding of the common humanity. So we can consider it as an indirect antidote. And from our tradition, when we talk about the antidote to the jealousy, we talk about something called, I think it's gratitude, Yesura, gratitude. And when somebody is doing something good, even if he has done so many bad things, if one good thing he has done, if you have this kind of feeling of gratitude of doing that one particular good thing, you may have less kind of jealousy, and it is indirect, what we call antidotes. And when we talk about the direct antidotes of jealousy and many other, I think all the afflictive emotions, we talk about something called I think it's the wisdom gained through the realization of the theory of concept of no self. So it's the ultimate the wisdom related with ultimate realization. And only this wisdom is the direct antidotes of these different types of afflictive emotions. And then I asked him, what is the antidotes of anxiety? And so he said that maybe it depends on what type of anxiety it is, and the mental disposition of the individual who is having this anxiety. So based on this kind of variabilities, we can have exchanging self with others, and also bodhicitta, maybe, you know.